Good evening, everyone. Wonderful to meet everybody again. And as always, let's begin with some practice. Sit with your head, neck, and trunk aligned. Feel the weight of your body coming down into your sit bones, establishing a stable adhara. Bring your mind back from all the space around you and enter into the sacred space within. Feel the flow and the touch of the breath in your nostrils. And enjoy the sensation of being alive. You can also create a digbandhana, sealing the directions by encircling yourself with a circle of light. Circle of light that creates a boundary that will maintain you in this inner space. Bow to the Guru force and surrender your seat so that the Guru can come and sit in you. And as you watch, notice your breath becoming smoother and longer and subtler. Allow that process of settling to continue in your breath, in your body, in your mind. Feel inside the top of your head and your forehead. And wherever you find tightness or tension, feel into the middle of it with a sense of wonderment. Gently and lovingly, until the muscles just let go. And feel around your eyes and eyebrows. Into your cheeks and the corners of your mouth. Let your cheeks just hang on the bones of your face. Release the corners of your jaw. The muscles in your neck. And from your throat center, feel out along your shoulders toward your fingertips. through your upper arms and through your forearms into your hands, your fingers, and your fingertips. Let your breath flow free and deep. Relax your fingertips and feel back into your fingers. Let go your fingers as if they could just float away and feel back into your hands. Then let your hands go as if they could just float away. Relax your forearms. Release your upper arms. And your shoulders. Now from your throat center, feel down into your chest. Relax your upper chest and upper back. Feel into the muscles between your ribs. Relax your rib cage. And feel into the center of your chest. Exhaling and inhaling, free and deep. The center of your chest. And feel down into your abdomen. Your belly muscles moving with the wave of breath and prana. Relax your navel center. Feel into your hip joints. And then into your gluteal muscles. Your thighs. Relax your thighs. And feel down into your calves and lower legs, your feet and your toes. Feel all your toes, your small toes, the fourth toes, the middle toes, second toes, feel the whole body breathe, whole body settled at peace. Relax your toes and feel back inside your feet. And back into your ankles, your calves and lower legs, your knees, relax your thighs, your hip joints, relax your navel center, your belly muscles, and your whole abdomen. The center of your chest, and your whole chest. From your shoulders to your fingertips and back again. Relax your throat center, your jaw, your cheeks, your eyes and eyebrows, your forehead and the top of your head. Now feel the flow of breath and prana between your navel and your nostrils. And as breath and mind flow together, Just listen for your mantra or your favorite divine name or soham. Let the mantra come to you in whatever way it comes, whatever speed and rhythm, and sound or light. Just follow that presence. Hear the gentle song. Draw your mind more and more still. Let your mind find its adhara. You may notice the mantra become more subtle. Just follow. Now feel that flow along the bridge of your nose between Ajna Chakra and Nasagra, where the nose bridge meets the upper lip. Feel that flow. through the left-hand channel in the left nostril. Mantra resonating in that space, as if the entire stream were flowing through the left-hand channel. Feel that flow through the right-hand channel in the right nostril. Knees left and right, and sink between them into a chamber of silent presence. Or if the Shakti calls you to a chakra or along the spine, follow where the Shakti leads you. And after thought, again, ripple your calm mind and then merge in the wave of breath and prana, so that your whole mind becomes full of that sound, that song, keeping this awareness. Bring your palms to your face and let your eyes gently open, observing the outward movement of your mind. Let your heart fill your palms with the fragrant blossoms of gratitude offered for the well-being of all beings, and in gratitude to the perennial Guru, the power of consciousness, linking us heart to heart at every moment and with every breath we take. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hello, everyone. On a beautiful summer's evening, I'm really grateful for the gorgeous weather we've had. Such a nice, cool summer after all of those summers that were so warm. For the moment, at least here in Minnesota. I realize it's a different story in Europe. We are just at the tag end of chapter 6 at verse 122. Any thoughts or comments before we start? Okay. Verse 122, chapter 6. Buddhas are made happy by the joy of beings. They sorrow, they lament when beings suffer. Bringing joy to beings, then, I please the Buddhas also. Offending them, the Buddhas I offend. In these next several verses, Shantideva is beginning to talk about the joy of doing this work of compassion and the energy that it gives you. Chapter 7 is going to be all about that energy and how it sustains us. Verse 123. Just as when a man who's tortured in a fire remains unmoved by little favors done to him, there's no way to delight the great compassionate Buddhas while we ourselves are causes of another's pain. So it's kind of a stark comparison here. That it causes us pain to cause other beings pain. And this is something I think that as you grow in bodhicitta, makes you more and more inclined towards forgiveness and awareness of the unintentional harms you may have caused to people. Um, and I think that's really an important thing because dealing with the harm that we may cause in those relationships is very important, especially when it's sizable. But even, I think, more important is the ability to forgive yourself. And that forgiveness is a real necessity to freeing yourself to be able to continue with doing the good work. And there'll be more about this in a little bit here. 124. The damage I have done to wandering beings saddens all the Buddhas in their great compassion. Therefore, all these sins I will confess today and pray that they will bear with me. The practice of confession is a venerable one in all kinds of religious traditions. Obviously, we have this in Christianity in a very ritualized form, a priestly office of confession. In the beginning, it wasn't that way. In the beginning of the way, people who belonged would simply take each other in their friendship and do the confession between them personally, which to my mind is better than just, having it happen with some third party. It's more direct. That process of confession brings us into the experience of what in her commentary Children calls the positive sadness at the awareness of things that we've done that have been hurtful. Um, that's one way to think of it. The traditional Indian way to think of it is prayaschitta, the burning. It's an emotional burning that happens with the realization that you've done something harmful. And at that point, that recognition of suffering, that moment of pratibhijya, that little flash of intuition in your mind, oh my God, I did something I shouldn't have done here, gives you the motivation to do what you can to make it better, to show the other party that you're aware of what happened, and then to commit to doing whatever you can to make up for it. And a part of that, from the perspective of self-forgiveness, is working through all of the emotions that are involved in whatever happened. That's the work. And sometimes it can be hard and a lot, particularly if it's a major kind of trauma. You can't really do forgiveness of yourself or another until you've gotten to the bottom of it. And it doesn't work in a relationship unless you've gotten to the bottom of it with the other person. And sometimes that's hard. I mean, obviously, people are often unwilling to revisit those experiences, and that makes it difficult to have a companion in that process of working it through. But the ability to do that with each other, I think, is one of the most precious gifts that we give. I mean, obviously you see that a lot in intimate relationships where people, live with each other lifelong. And there actually gets to be a kind of intimate container within which that process of forgiveness can occur if things are going well. 125. And that I might rejoice the Buddha's hearts, I will be master of myself and be the servant of the world, and not respond though others trample, wound, or kill me. Now let the guardians of the world rejoice. This is making the sankalpa. I will do my best. I will do my best to make them happy. 126. The great compassionate lords consider as their own all wanderers. Of this there is no doubt. Beings, then, are Buddha's very self. Thus, how can I not treat them with respect? Buddha is the essence of all beings because Buddha is consciousness. This is the point of one point of the famous saying, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. If you come to any sort of fixed idea about what God is, get rid of it immediately. There's a movement in, this is a movement in Christian theology. It's more pronounced in the Orthodox Church than in the Roman Church. But the same thing happens in Hinduism and Buddhism. The Greek word for it is apophatic, um, meaning that you empty out all of the possible forms within which you might encounter divinity, because they're all limited in ways they shouldn't be. This is why, on the one hand, this is why I think it's really a good thing, on the one hand, to hold the Hindu view of expansive essence of being called Brahman, and at the same time, to hold the ultimately diminutive Buddhist awareness of shunyata, of voidness, of this apophatic emptiness. Because once you get rid of all of the forms, then you have that experience of silence. That is the only thing you can really say is the experience of divinity. Swami Veda used to say all the time, the highest meditation is an experience of perfect silence. There is no experience in that. All of your ideas about who you are and who God is are gone. And you need to have kind of both. One of the ways that the Western tradition came to terms with this was to think of all of these forms within which we, define divinity as being God's energies in the world. And those energies are God's and they take tangible forms, but they're not the whole thing. And the whole thing can't be known. It says in several places in the Old Testament, no one shall see the face of God and yet live. Is that some kind of a scare tactic? That if you get to the ultimate experience of spirituality, that you somehow die? Well, no, not really. What it means is the human mind with its words and symbols and forms cannot contain that experience. And we also know from our knowledge of the higher realms of Kundalini Yoga that if a person has that experience prematurely, it probably will burn them up. I mean, it is a way to die, and a way that the yogis sometimes use consciously to do that. But I think what's important here is to be able to have both of those points of view in your mind. And I think that's a very wise path. There was a wonderful 12th century text called The Cloud of Unknowing that is about exactly this, about sort of getting rid of all of your conceptions and all of your ideas and just going deeper and deeper and deeper into that silence. Highly recommended, actually, as a reading for Christian yogis. 126. The great compassionate lords consider, oh, we did that one. 127. Venerating them will please the Buddha's hearts and perfectly secure the welfare of myself. This will drive away the sorrows of the world, and therefore it will be my constant practice again, the sankalpa, to do that. And as we know, we all fall short of the glory of God, at least until the last moment. But still, the intention is really important. The best thing we can do, Children says, for our teachers, ourselves, and the world is to think of benefiting rather than harming one another. 128. Imagine that the steward of a king does injury to multitudes of people. Those among the injured who are wise will not respond to violence, even if they with not respond with violence, even if they can. They will not seek retribution. For stewards, after all, are not alone. They are supported by the kingly power. Likewise, I should not make light of lesser men who do me little injuries, for they have guardians of hell for allies, and also the compassionate Buddhas. Therefore, I'll respect all living beings as though they were the subjects of that wrathful king. It's a warning against, well, a warning against getting triggered and an encouragement to deal with all of the ways that you get triggered by people in your life, so that these emotional reactions that we have can stay sort of in a manageable range where we can deal with them. You know, there are some things that come along that just get us so worked up that we can hardly keep ourselves from acting on them, you know?
Reminds me of ice and the silver shirts.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the satyagrahis, um, who placed themselves in a determined state of mind to not be angry when they were beaten. And so they went down one after another, after another, after another, after another, until the awareness of the beaters, the British soldiers, was pierced by seeing all of this. And they were made to feel the deserved sense of shame about what they were doing. She says in her commentary here, in verses 128 through 134, Shantideva perseveres in his attempt to make us see that it makes no sense to give in to the tug of aggression. His final teaching on the value of patience is to explain once again that our actions have karmic consequences. Our aggressive mind grows stronger, the world appears increasingly hellish. You ever notice that about people who are refusing to deal with their suffering? The way they talk about their lives, what they see as they continually come up on irritation after irritation after irritation is a pretty hellish vision of life. And somebody who doesn't have that same emotional habit can be in the same kind of situation and not have that view come to them. Oh, yeah, that guy's bugging me. But look at the garden, you know. Um, so it helps us to not give in to those irritations that end up creating sanskaras in the future that end up becoming painful to us. 131. And yet the pains of hell to be endured through making living beings suffer, could these ever be unleashed on us by all fury of an angry king? And even if that king were pleased, enlightenment he could not give us, for this will only be achieved by bringing happiness to living beings. Who is this wrathful king? Any ideas? The wrathful king is me.
Yeah, the judging ego.
I, me, and mine. Right. And that self-identification is what makes all of those karmic sanskaras stick to your mind. And that sense of wonder and joy and curious interest that you gradually cultivate as you live a mindful life begins to dissolve the glue. Rather than being such and such a person did this to me, it becomes, oh yeah, that happened. This other guy was involved. 133. Granted then that future Buddhahood is forged through bringing happiness to beings, how can I not see that glory, fame, and pleasure, even in this life, will likewise come? For patience in samsara brings such things as beauty, health, and good renown. Its fruit is great longevity, the vast contentment of a universal king. Now, that's actually an interesting thing for a Buddhist to say. Almost sounds like Christian scripture, doesn't it? Um, but that king is the Buddhahood, of course. So that concludes chapter 6, patience. We enter into chapter 7 on enthusiasm or heroic perseverance. Children opens with chapter 7 begins the third and final section of the way of the Bodhisattva. The first 3 chapters present ways of connecting with bodhi-chitta. The next 3 chapters explain how to keep it from diminishing. In this third section, Shantideva tells us what causes bodhi-chitta to grow and flourish even more, ever more and more. The paramita of enthusiasm works like a miracle ingredient that brings eagerness to all we do. What the bodhisattva commits to isn't a trivial matter. Without enthusiasm, we might push too hard or give up altogether. As the Zen master Suzuki Roshi put it, what we're doing here is so important we had better not take it too seriously. Ooh, it's like my picture's frozen. Are you hearing me okay? Okay, good.
Yes, but your picture is frozen.
I wonder what's up with my... I'm on the right Wi-Fi. Oh well. There we are. I actually heard an interesting story the other day just to illustrate this kind of attitude. Gonna go into Facebook here. And I'm gonna read you a post. Oops. For Father's Day, Saumya Arya, Swami Veda's daughter, posted a wonderful little story. Now, we're used to thinking of Swami Veda as being a great yogi and a great meditator, and we, put him under that pedestal we all usually put him under. And he had a lot of ways of escaping that pedestal, um, of not taking what he was doing too seriously in a way that would harm the nature of it. She says, more than a decade after his death, my dad still makes me laugh. This was a Father's Day post. I wrote this in 2015, the last year he was here with us on Father's Day. My dad is a Hindu priest, scholar, spiritual leader, and international teacher and speaker. Sounds dignified, right? He and most of us kids are nocturnal. One night in the mid-1970s, after watching Star Trek on Space 1999, Tata said, let's go on a grocery run. He loaded us in the car, and off we went to Applebaum's, the only 24-hour grocery store in our neighborhood. Tata asked, do you know why they call it a grocery run? We didn't. Tata had us pile into one of the carts, grabbed the handles, and took off running. He yelled out grocery items, and we had to try and grab them as we zoomed past them. Stuff got knocked over. This became a regular activity. We would always pick up anything we knocked over. After one particularly boisterous run, the manager said, Dr. Arya, you're no longer allowed in my store unless your wife is with you. We had been barred from Applebaum's. We were sad that our midnight grocery runs were over, but thrilled that we had been kicked out of somewhere. So after that, we would drive to Applebaum's and my dad would grab a cart from outside the store and rush us around the parking lot, all of us screaming and laughing. The manager would stand at the window and watch, shaking his head. When we moved to India in 1981, I was mad at my parents. I wanted to stay in the US. Things were tense. One day, my dad dragged me out with him. He stopped at a small corner store. I trailed after him, sullen and quiet. Suddenly, he whirled around and shouted, "Grocery run!" We began running around the cramped store, tossing stuff in our basket. Finally, the store owner said we had to leave. We did, howling with laughter. A couple of years ago, I went to Burkina Faso. This was in 2012. West Africa with Tata. I was actually on that trip with him too, who is now in his 80s. One evening, he was tired after giving a speech, so I helped him into his wheelchair. He looked up at me and whispered, "Where's the nearest place to buy groceries?" Me, a bit surprised, said, "I could find out." Tata said, "No, better not. We just get kicked out." Imagine that on my bio, blah, blah, international teacher, spiritual leader, banned from grocery stores on 3 continents. He was wonderful at not taking things too seriously. And the minute things started to go that direction, he'd do something to mess it up. It was wonderful. And by the way, if you want to read, I think one of the best readings on Buddhism is Suzuki Roshi's 3 volumes of essays on Zen Buddhism. They are just wonderful. My nephew wrote me one time from college. He said, "Uncle Steve, I've found this writer that I like named Alan Watts. Can you help me find more stuff like that?" So I helped him to identify the Vipassana Meditation Center on campus there, where he could learn some meditation. And I sent him the 3 volume set of Suzuki Roshi's um, essays. And this kid, he read them. This kid reads what I send him. It was marvelous. She goes on to tell a story about her time with Trungpa. This immense flexibility is something I learned from the example of Trungpa Rinpoche. His enthusiasm enabled him to accomplish an amazing amount in his life. When some things didn't work, Rinpoche's attitude was no big deal. If it's time for something to flourish, it will. If it's not, it won't. The trick is not getting caught in hope and fear. We can put our whole heart into whatever we do, but if we freeze our attitude into for or against, we're setting ourselves up for stress. Instead, we could just go forward with curiosity, wondering where this experiment will lead. This kind of open-ended inquisitiveness captures the spirit of enthusiasm or heroic perseverance. I love this. I used to say, so often when people would come into psychotherapy, they were afraid that, we were going to uncover something awful, especially if they were feeling bad coming in, depressed or overly anxious. And I would tell them, you know, I'd like you to just consider adopting an attitude of wonder and curious interest about yourself. We're going to explore some things, and I hope we do it in a way that you can learn something useful that you didn't know before about who you are. And I look back on that at this point in my life, And that was a good thing to do. And I think that's a good way to live your life with a sense of wonder and curious interest. Because it, like she says, it saves you from getting too strapped into one attitude or the other, where you get irritated and angry and tempted to act out, or you get overly enthusiastic and start trying too hard to do something that it's not time to get done. Keeps you in a more balanced place. Verse number 1 in chapter 7 says, "Thus with patience I will bravely persevere. Through zeal it is that I shall reach enlightenment. If no wind blows, then nothing stirs, and neither is there merit without perseverance." It's beginning to bring the metaphor of the wind and sailing into this. In the second verse, heroic perseverance means delight in virtue. Its contrary may be defined as laziness, an inclination for unwholesome ways, despondency, and self-contempt. This is a wonderful verse. You may remember in the Yoga Sutras, in chapter 1 in the Samadhipada, sutra number 30 lists a whole bunch of obstacles to achievement in yoga. Vyadhi, Sthana, and so on and so forth. There are quite a few of them. They're in the sutra, they're labeled as antarayas, ways that your mind goes awry. And that is actually a synonym for klesha. Swamiji always made the point that the list of kleshas in chapter 2, in the early verses of chapter 2, is not an exhaustive list. It's more like a set of chapter headings for the kleshas. And so in Sutra 30 of chapter 1, a number of specific kleshas are listed, and one of them is alasya, laziness, which gets defined here as the love of comfort, that these are things that tend to sort of overcome the excitement that we get when when things are going well and we're doing something good. I mean, think of the energy that comes to you when you're teaching. I've talked a lot about this in recent years because it's so remarkable to me how much joy comes from that process and from this opportunity to have a conversation with you all about these things. It gives me a lot of energy to keep going. And that's the sort of thing I think that happens when you're practicing. Now, I'm going to put the word virtue in quotation marks because in Western European civilization, we have a way of getting very moralistic about all of this. And I think that's one of those ways of getting too nailed down in either one or the other, hope or fear, good or bad. Um, but virtue is something we feel when love is happening, selfless love. When out of that compassion we're trying to cultivate, you take some action that delivers that to someone else. And that's a very satisfying thing. That joy is really satisfying and it really keeps you going. And so here, Shantideva is beginning to introduce things that are the obstacles to that. Children says, once we have trust in the teachings, we'll naturally take delight in virtue. When I realized, for example, that Shantideva's instructions could cut through my unhappiness, I became enthusiastic about applying them. Delight in virtue in this case meant working wisely with my emotions and learning to gently tame my mind. It meant reaching out to offer kindness and support to as many beings as possible and doing this eagerly, not out of a sense of duty. I think that's really important. You know, the idea here is this The joy of virtue is its own reward, as people are fond of saying. It's not something you need to sort of sign a contract with the devil to complete. If you do sign a contract about doing virtue, you're signing it with the devil. You're signing it with that other king we were talking about a few minutes ago. I can tell you from experience, she says, that when there's a shift towards eagerness, life takes on a whole new meaning. Not the meaning that comes from careers or relationships, but the meaning that comes from using everything that happens as an opportunity to wake up. There will always be challenges, but they need not be seen as obstacles. It's all part of the path of enlightenment. The opposite of enthusiasm is laziness. Here, Shantideva presents three kinds: laziness per se, not being willing to make an effort, and the despondency of self-contempt. In verse 2, he describes the first two together as an inclination for unwholesome ways. Trungpa Rinpoche calls the first kind of laziness comfort orientation. I like that. I love the terms that Trungpa came up with. It was very original and very spot on. We use comfort to escape our uneasiness. Just think of the times that we've done this. We've all done it. How many times have we used food, for example, to deal with a mood? How many times have we medicated our anxiety through self-pleasuring or something else? Um, this doesn't mean we can't enjoy comfort in our lives. We just don't need to become addicted to it. And having some awareness of why you're doing something helps you to distinguish between those times when you're self-medicating and those times when you're just legitimately enjoying. And once you have a sense of that distinction in your own mind, it really helps you to move much better in that direction of having a joyful life, having the life that Shantideva describes as happiness. Said this is what sentient beings predictably do, even little bugs and beetles. Did you ever wonder what those flies are doing, repeatedly struggling up a sunny window and flying down? Like most of us, they're looking for comfort. There's a sutra in which beings from another galaxy visit the Buddha to discuss the Dharma. They're shocked when Buddha tells them he teaches the truth of suffering to get beings to enter the path. They find this an extremely crude technique and say that where they come from, enlightenment is directly introduced through pleasing smells. The Buddha replies that he'd be glad to use such an approach, but it would never work here because earth beings immediately become attached to pleasure. The second kind of laziness, Trungpa Rinpoche calls loss of heart. We feel we've tried and tried, but we never get it right. Things never seem to work out. We indulge in discouragement and lose our will to help ourselves or anybody else. Boy, this is a tough one for people. I'm having a real struggle with somebody that I've been talking to for 4 years now. And she's very stubborn about her discouragement. And she remains stuck in a vengeful and fearful place that I have just a lot of trouble trying to help her get out of. I think this is one of the things that people struggle with more than anything else. And once you get a taste of that, what that sense of wonder and curious interest can do for your mind, then you understand experientially how that can be helpful even in moments when things are not going well. And you can, rather than getting irritated and pissed off and responding in an aggressive and harmful way, you can say, "Oh, I wonder what's going on here. What's wrong? What's going wrong here?" You can puzzle about it. So I think having a sense of wonder and curious interest isn't just about having a joyful experience of your life, but it's about being able to also engage whatever isn't working in your life in a constructive way that helps you actually see what isn't working and to have the patience and perseverance to stick around long enough to be able to see what you need to see. The third kind of laziness, Trungpa Rinpoche calls couldn't care less. This despondency of self-contempt takes the wind out of our sails. Doubting ourselves so profoundly is much more stubborn and bitter than merely losing heart. And that's what I'm dealing with this person I've been talking to. She's just really stuck, really, really stuck. I don't know if she's going to make it out in this life. We'll see. And she's had a lot, objectively, has had a lot to deal with, definitely. Um, but it's destroying her ability to feel like there's anything useful in her life. I mean, she looks around her and all she sees is hell in every corner. Hell at work, hell at home. You know, she has a mother who's had a stroke and she has to take care of this stroke patient, and that's really demanding. And she works in a school, and so she's got kids to deal with all the time. Very seldom even has practical time for self-recreation, for even being out with friends. I've been trying really hard for some months to get her to find a few more friends. But it's really hard because she's really she's kind of determined to stay where she is. I'm looking at something that David has put in the chat, talking about prayer as a way to reach out towards others. Helps me live lightly, he says. As I pray, I release my concerns and frustrations about wanting to do more to help those who are struggling. Of course, I do what I can to uplift and support another, but I also remain mindful that God is within them throughout their trials and triumphs. Yeah, that's lovely. And I think that's one thing that prayer can be good for. It's a way to kind of remind yourself of getting into a balanced attitude. Verse 4. Oops. Verse 3. Complacent pleasure in the joys of idleness, a craving for repose and sleep, no qualms about the sorrows of samsara. These are the source and nurse of laziness. Complacency and pleasure, definitely. Of course, since you've heard me lecture you all about sleep again and again, it's very, it's actually very rare for people to sleep too much. Across the world, the estimate is that something around 90% of the population of the world is sleep deprived. You know, for some it's relatively mild, but it's considered by the World Health Organization to be one of the most important epidemics that there is. And we know just statistically in America, 100% of all traffic crashes where somebody crosses the midline and has a head-on crash, every single one of those, 100% of them are narcoleptic. People fell asleep at the wheel. It's also true of major industrial accidents where someone has major damage to a limb, 100% narcoleptic. People whose brain and nervous system are forcing them to sleep. So there, of course, there is such a thing as intentionally sleeping too much. Every once in a while, I will want to go back to bed after my meditation in the morning to have another hour of cartoons because that's what my dreams are kind of like at that time of day. They don't seem to be very significant ones. Um, But for the most part, people sleep too little, so I wouldn't be quite as concerned about that part. No qualms about the sorrows of samsara. Inattention to the ways in which our suffering becomes motivation for the work of compassion. That's a major one, I think. Yeah, we can move on into verse 4. Snared by the trapper of defiled emotion, enmeshed and taken in the toils of birth, how could I not know that thus I've strayed into the mouth, the very jaws of death? So now Shantideva is raising the specter of our death. Children says, verse 4 refers to the nidana chain, the chain of cause and effect that generates samsara. The wheel of samsara spins around and around from birth to inevitable death. Like a poor animal snared by the trapper of defiled emotion, we're trapped in this cycle of suffering. Happily, we can interrupt the samsaric chain reaction by turning our mind and patiently refraining from escalating our kleshas. This, in fact, is what all Shantideva's teaching address, how to free ourselves from the vicious cycle of samsara. It's Yoga Sutras 2, Sutra 3, Klesha Tanukarana, thinning down the kleshas, diluting their painful impact on our life, and at the same time, increasing the way we live in a way that gives us joy and some real freedom from the way that our action is constantly creating our future, so that we end up living a life that creates a better future for us with more opportunities for spiritual growth, more opportunities for enlightenment in them. And the next several verses deal with how easy it is to sort of not pay attention to the fact that we're all going to die. Verse 5. Don't you see how one by one death comes to claim your fellow men? And yet you slumber on so soundly, like a buffalo beside its butcher. That's kind of dramatic. All paths of flight are blocked. The Lord of Death now has you in his sights. How can you take pleasure in your food? How can you delight to rest and sleep? It's a really potent suggestion to sort of lose yourself in this positive orientation to life, the life of joy and the life of wonder and curious interest. Because otherwise, the presence of death becomes a life of fear. This person I was talking about a few minutes ago, on the one hand, is absolutely terrified that she's going to die. She watched her brother recently being cremated. He died prematurely in front of her from a cardiac arrest. And as she was watching his cremation, she had this sense of shock and astonishment that, oh my God, this is going to happen to me. And it still, a year between 1 and 2 years later, it still fills her with absolute terror to think about it. And yet, on the other hand, she says, I don't want to live anymore. It's time for Divine Mother to come and take me away. And I have to constantly remind her, yeah, it doesn't work like that. Sorry. And I'm very careful to watch for signs of genuine suicidality in this person because I think long term it may be a risk for her. Death will be so quick to swoop on you. Gather merit until that moment comes. Wait till then to banish laziness? Then there'll be no time. What will you do? This I have not done, this I'm only starting, and this I'm only halfway through. Then is the sudden coming of the Lord of Death. And oh, the thought, alas, I'm finished. She says in her commentary here, I saw a cartoon entitled Reasons Not to Meditate. First, there's a drawing of an infant with the caption, too young. Then there are students, parents with children, and people at work with the caption, too busy. The next drawing shows an elderly person with the words, too old. Finally, there's a corpse with the message, too late. When we're about to die and we're having our last thoughts, will they be about the dream house we didn't build, the mortgage we didn't pay off, the novel we didn't finish? Feeling that we've failed to accomplish our worldly goals is not the frame of mind we want to be in when we die. Really important. It's often said that your last thought determines how you go into the process of reincarnation, but that last thought is conditioned by every thought previous to it in your life. So, how do you arrive at the moment of your death? For people who live that kind of fearful life where they're constantly, tied down in hope and fear, those are the thoughts that come. Oh my God, what have I not done? Rather, we should have a heart full of recollections of things we have done, love we have given, compassion we have showed. It won't be perfect, be perfect. And it's clear from the texts that we have about the process of the transition that you do go through a period of examining all those sanskaras. And there will be some that are painful for sure. But let's maximize the other kind as much as possible so that when we come to the end of our life, we won't be disturbed by it. I think that whole process of observing people in the process of active dying is so interesting. I think it's wonderful work for people to do. Everybody I know who has been in that line of work has just spoken about how much better it was than they could ever have imagined. She says, I was recently with a dying practitioner who admitted that her Dharma practice now seemed meaningless. She didn't understand what relevance it had for her as the ground was slipping away. This could happen to any of us if we don't use our bodhi-chitta practices and meditation as a way of surrendering and letting go. Now, a lot of this experience is inevitable because death is the experience of our life dissolving away. And so, of course, we're going to have a sense that, there's not much more that I can do. With each meditation session, you could train in opening to whatever arises and relaxing with the immediacy of your experience. Just acknowledge your pleasant and unpleasant thoughts without bias and let them pass away. Then, at the time of death, you'll be ready to let go of your attachment to this life and surrender to the process of dissolving. Very good and very important advice. Now, verse 9. Your tear-stained cheeks, your red and swollen eyes, Such will be the depths of your distress. You'll gaze into the faces of your hopeless friends and see the coming servants of the deadly Lord. Verse 10, the memory of former sins will torture you. The screams and din of hell break on your ears. With very terror you will follow yourself. What will you do then in such extremity of fear? Doesn't have to be that way, of course. She's talking about what happens if you don't live a mindful life. Then you have probably a more potent fear of death when it comes. And if you are so scared while still alive, like fishes writhing on the open ground, what need to speak of pain unbearable in hells created by past evil deeds? The hells in which the boiling molten bronze will burn your body, tender like a baby's flesh. All is now prepared. Your former deeds have done it. How will you lie back so free of care? Children cautions us here in the commentary. She says in the introduction to the Padmakara translation of the Way of the Bodhisattva, there's an excellent discussion of Shantideva's teaching technique. As I mentioned before, he alternates between scaring us with the consequences of our evil actions and pointing out the wonders and benefit of practicing the Dharma. The way to learn from this is to remember Shantideva's advice. There's no time to lose, so don't waste your life sowing seeds of misery. Depending on mental habits you've strengthened, you will find yourself in pleasant or unpleasant surroundings. Illusory though they may be, you will experience them as extremely real. I don't like the scare tactics too much. People have enough fear of the end of their life. They don't need any, most people don't need much help with that part. But what they don't realize, I think, is the amount and quality of the joyfulness that comes from living your life mindfully, not just doing good works of compassion, which is, sort of the stereotype of the bodhisattva, but being able to keep an attitude of wonder and curious interest about the things that are painful in your life so that you can discover something useful about them, something that's useful in the sense of motivating you towards compassionate action, and something that can teach you about how to solve the problem. Helps you keep your eyes clear to be able to see. One of, I think, my favorite gospel is the Gospel of Thomas, the saint who went to India. And that gospel is unlike any of the other gospels because there's no narrative structure to it. All it is a collection of Jesus' parables, one after another. And very often he'll just give the parable and he doesn't state a moral to it. He leaves that to the listener. And he says, those who have eyes to see, let them see. Those who have ears to hear, let them hear. How mindful are you? How aware are you? How much in the moment are you? So I like that. And I think that's probably a good place to close for this evening. We'll come back to this again one more time in this series next Monday. And we'll see how far we get in chapter 7. Any comments or questions before we end?
Oh, so we are meeting next
Yeah.
Monday. Okay,
Yeah, we are. I put a fifth session in this time because July is shaping up to be kind of a busy month, and in August I'm going off to Boston to do this thing at Kripalu. Um, and there's a bunch of other stuff happening that will take me away from the house. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to schedule during those times. So I figured we'd spend at least one more session this time around.
So
great.
next Monday, the 29th, it's a full moon.
Oh, okay. All right.
There'll be a full moon Havan, right? Did you say that, Emilio?
Will be a full moon Havan, yes.
When is your heaven?
6:30 p.m.
Oh,
But you can have the session and we can always.
yes. I mean, I'm getting the sessions up on YouTube. They're all there. If you want to, re-listen to any of them, they're all up there on YouTube, and I'll put this one up and that one up as well, in case you should decide.
YouTube or Vimeo?
Both, I think.
Well, they're there
Oh,
on Vimeo, but
wonderful.
I put them up on my YouTube channel as well.
Wonderful.
Someday, I need to make friends with some kind of a social media person because I don't do much to sort of maintain or promote it. And there's a lot of stuff up there. I should probably do something about it, but
Yeah, me too. I think I signed up for Instagram, but I'm not sure. But yeah, little gems could be put onto Instagram too.
yeah. Okay, let's enjoy for 2 minutes with each other. Om Tat Sat Brahmarpanamastu. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, Stoma.
Thank you, Stoma.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.